Hello, it's Belinda. Today I am here to share a process which I am going to be very honest right from the start is quite experimental for me. When I got my silhouette cameo for, one of the first things that I cut out was this really cool starburst cut file. It takes up almost a full 12 by 12 sheet of paper. I was just testing out the settings and I cut it out, and as soon as I cut it out I had an idea in my head of something that I wanted to try, but I knew that it was going to be quite time consuming and I had a lot of other projects on the go, so I put the cut file away and I didn't really think too much more about it until I saw the June Scrap the Boys challenge prompt. Which is all about stargazing and galaxies and things like that. And so immediately I remembered this wonderful star cut file and what I had planned to do with it. So today I am going to be going back and seeing if I can make this work. So I've recut the cut file with a nice, really thick black cardstock, and that's going to be my front layer of the file. And then inside each of these stars I am planning on creating little individual shaker pockets. To go back and back all of these with foam, as well as these really long tendrily bits that come out, I just thought that was going to be really labor intensive, and to be honest I don't know if the plan that I have is going to make it any easier or not, but it's what I'm going with. So this is the front, this is going to be the front of the cut file. It's this black one that's cut out. Then I have used the silhouette to cut, and I know you're not going to be able to see this well on camera, but this is just a piece of clear plastic acetate. I'm not sure, perhaps if I take these off, might be able to see that. Anyway, that is just going to sit behind the star burst down here. So I'll attach the acetate, and then to create the depth behind the cluster of stars, I have gone and I've just used some cheap white cardstock, textured cardstock that I have in my stash, and I've recut the cut file out, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So I'm going to adhere these 6 copies of the cut file to each other, which stacked up should give it a nice little bit of dimension. Let's see if I can get that up on camera, perhaps not. There we go. Nice little bit of dimension. So I'll have the black, the acetate, then I'll fill the, then I'll adhere these behind. You can see it's a very well thought out plan. Adhere these behind, fill all of the little stars with the shaker pocket, and then I've cut another piece of just the backing of the stars with vellum, because I didn't want anything that was going to make it completely opaque behind those stars. So it's just some vellum. Now the cut file is going to be taking up the majority of real estate on this layout, but I did also remember that I had this older Kaisercraft stargazer collection, which I thought would be perfect. I haven't printed off a photo yet. I've got an idea of a photo that I'm going to use. It's probably going to be a photo of my son sleeping, but that's my plan. So bear with me, this is probably not going to be the smoothest process or the smoothest process video, but it's an experiment. Let's give it a go. Okay, so I'm starting off with adhering together all of these layers of the cut file. I have set the video speed for this video a fair bit faster than I would normally do, just because a lot of it is quite tedious and repetitive, and I didn't think you needed to watch it at a slower speed. Let me know in the comments below, do you prefer your videos to be quite sped up when you're watching them, or do you like it a little bit slower so that you can see what's going on? I'm never really too sure what to do with my videos. They are on the longer side, and that is because I choose not to speed them up too much. But if you are someone that likes to just churn through the videos as I do, and you would rather see them happening quickly and shorter videos, then let me know and I will take that into consideration for the future videos that I make. So what you're seeing here is I'm using my art glitter glue with the fine tip applicator to apply some adhesive to the back of the front layer of the star cut file, which is the black layer. And then it's very hard to see on camera, but I have just adhered that acetate down onto it. Some of the glue has leaked through to the acetate, which I'll talk about when I come back on live shortly. But I really wasn't sure how long it was going to take me to do this. I had planned on using this spray adhesive, and you'll see me have a go at it here. It was a great idea in theory. It was a really quick way to apply adhesive to a large surface area, but in practice it just didn't work. I don't know if there are different spray adhesives available, but the one that I had certainly was not going to work, because even once I'd been through this process that you see me do here now of sticking all of those pieces together using my fingers, they just weren't holding firmly, and I didn't want to leave it that way and then fill the stars with glitter and sequins and have them all leak out and end up everywhere through my page protectors. So I do go back to using the art glitter glue and applying that to stick the layers together. So now I'm about to come back on live. Okay, so that's all done. It actually was a lot quicker than I thought it would be, the process. So I did try and use the spray adhesive, but it was a light hold adhesive, so it just wasn't going to work. So I did go through with my art glitter glue, which has got the fine liner tip on it, and pretty meticulously applied a little bit of adhesive to layer up those backing pieces. So you should hopefully be able to see here how nice and thick the white pieces are, and I've adhered the back with the acetate, the black with the acetate to the front, and they are ready to be filled. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to leave this aside to dry, for the adhesive to dry completely, because, and you're probably not going to see it on camera here, but there are little bits of glue have come out onto the acetate, and I want to be able to just clean those up a little bit before I fill the pockets with glitter and sequins and sparkly things. And then I'll pop the vellum on the back and we'll get on to the rest of the layout. Okay, so that cut file is now all done, and I think it looks amazing. You can see, hopefully it's got lots of nice dimensions, so that is going to add a bit of bulk to the layout, so I'm going to be careful about what else I put on from here. I've gone ahead and I've filled those pockets with a mixture of gold, it's a soft gold, and a silver sequins, and then just the smaller stars have got some silver and gold glitter in them, and I've kind of mixed it up all through, so it's really pretty. It's nice and shaky. The vellum on the back has kept everything in place quite well. I don't think anything's going to leak out. It is a little bit warped, so I'm going to go and stick that underneath or between some really heavy books while I work on the rest of the layout before I stick that down. You can see I've chosen my photo now. It's this gorgeous little photo of my son when he was a newborn and he's fast asleep. Because I don't want to add too much more dimension to this layout, but I do want it still to be quite interesting, I'm going to go and, in the interest or in the spirit of experimentation, I'm going to really do something that's quite outside of my comfort zone for me with my mixed media. So I've got some white gesso, I've got my little makeup blending sponge, I've got some Distress Oxide in chipped sapphire because I want to bring some of those really dark night sky blues in. I've got some Liquitex white acrylic ink, I've got a silver acrylic paint which is from Ali Edwards, and I have my Gansai Tambi Starry Colors watercolors, and I do also have the little glitter pots that I use to fill those stars, which I may sprinkle a little bit of that throughout it as well. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into playing, and this is going to be very experimental, so fingers crossed it all goes well. Let's see how we go. Okay, so that was a lot of live talking there, but I just wanted to talk you through my process because this was quite a bit more experimental. Maybe it was more for me than it was for you, but I wanted to give a little bit more detail about what I was doing on this one. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking my pencil and I'm adding a really, really light pencil line around where those stars are going to go because I want my mixed media to follow the line of the stars and just to give it that really nice, deep night sky look. So I have my makeup blender brush. This is just a cheap, not brush, sponge. This is just one of those cheap teardrop shaped makeup blending sponges that I picked up from Kmart in a pack of 2. And the reason I've decided to use this is because I wanted the white that I'm applying to have a nice fluffy texture. So it is really giving you that feeling of being in the sky. And I'm using gesso. This isn't acrylic paint. This is gesso that I'm applying here because I know that I'm going to come back over the top and apply some watercolor. This Kaisercraft paper from the paper pack is quite thin. So I knew that I was going to need a fair bit of gesso there in order to have the paper hold the amount of mixed media that I was planning on putting on it. So you see I've brought over the cut file along with the photo that I'm going to use, and I'm just checking to see where those are going to be placed, and I'm making sure that I've popped my gesso down so that it's going to cover the areas that I needed it to, and I wanted to make sure that there was enough on the edges that you'd see it peeking out behind the photo and of course behind that beautiful glittery starburst. So I'm going to add my first layer of colour, and this is the Distress Oxide ink pad. I've just popped it down on this glass plate that I have, a nice thick smear, and now I'm adding some water to the plate as well as some water to my paper. And I've got this really nice thick big brush, and I'm applying it just really no real technique to it. I'm just putting blotches of paper down, and because it was a little bit too dark, I am coming back in with my paper towel and I'm dabbing some of that up, and I put my heat tool over it to dry it off before doing the next layer. So the next layer that I'm coming in with, I'm using some of my watercolors in tubes, and I'm trying to get a little bit of a darker, deeper blue here. So I'm using a mixture of a blue and a grey, a dark grey, and that's giving me bit more of a darker color. It still wasn't exactly what I was going for. It's a little bit turquoise, but this just goes to show that even though something's not exactly as you envisaged it, in the end, once I'm done, although as I was putting this on, I was like, oh, that's really not the color that I wanted, but in the end, it actually adds a nice bit of depth to the color. It makes, it adds a little bit of highlight, and you'll see when I'm finished with the mixed media what I mean. It was really nice. I liked it. So I've dried that off again, and I'm coming back in with a little bit more of the watercolor in the tube, and this is more of the grey and a little bit less of the blue. So it's giving me a bit closer to the color that I was initially hoping for, which is a darker blue. And I'm just adding a little bit more of the grey in because I really did want it to be darker, and you can see that's going on really, really dark now. So I'm only applying just some really small bits of this, and again, there's no particular technique that I'm using. There was no pre-planning of where those colours were going to go. I just popped them in where I thought it needed a little splash of colour. So now comes the part where I am layering my photo with some of the papers from that paper kit. Of course, I'm starting off here with a white border, which I almost always add to my photos. And then I'm going to grab the offcut from the black cardstock that I cut out on the silhouette. I knew there was going to be just enough left there to matte a photo layer. I don't normally use a black matte, but I think in this case, because I had the black cut file, the photos in black and white, it added just a nice little pop to help that photo stand out on the page. And now I've grabbed that paper pack and I'm flicking through to see which ones I'm going to use on this layer. They weren't all really going to work, but I've decided on these two different blues. One is a very pale blue with like a white brush stroke pattern almost through it, which is the one that I'm using here. And then as you can see, the next layer is going to be this blue starburst. What do we call it? A starburst? Florally? Whatever you want to call it. So I'm starting off with the pale blue. I'm sorry it's a little bit off camera here. I'm going to trim that down. And then I think out will come my distressing tool to rough up those edges. And then I will do the same with the darker blue just laying it down. I wasn't doing any offset layers because the layer is quite busy with the background and the cut file. I didn't want to do anything crazy with the photo, just nice and simple, a couple of layers, slightly distressed edges, and that will be it, ready to pop onto the layer. So back to that background, I'm adding some of this Liquitex white acrylic ink just in some splatters. And I'm going to create a few different splatters here. So I started off with the white acrylic. I've gone back to that blue that you can see I had quite a lot of, the darker blue, and I'm just adding a little bit of that. A little handy tip there for when you are doing some splatters, it's sometimes easier to grab another paintbrush or another tool or something like that and tap that onto the brush that has the colour on it. It just helps it come off a little bit better. So now I'm adding some silver in, and to do that I just grabbed that silver Ali Edwards acrylic paint and I've added some water to it until it's nice and thin, or thin enough to splatter. And then I'm adding that. So you can see it's starting to really come alive, and hopefully you can see now what I meant about that blue that didn't quite turn out the way that I wanted it to. It adds a lot of depth to the background, and I think it makes it really look like a night sky. I really love it. So out comes those Gansai Tambi watercolors. It's got a whole bunch of different golds, and they're really shimmery and iridescent. So I just was having a look at the glitter that I used to see which gold most closely matched the gold tone that was in the glitter. Okay, now what I'm showing you here, I ran my paper through my Mink machine at a really nice hot temperature, and I put another piece of paper on top of it to protect the Mink sheet. But as you can see, some of the white paper stuck, well, the whole piece of white paper stuck to my background. It was obviously still a little bit wet, and so I had to tear it off, and I was devastated to begin with until I really looked at it and realized that those white pieces of paper that got left behind really added to the texture and the depth of the background. So in the end, it was something that I really didn't mind at all, because I thought it added a nice little touch to what I thought was a complete background. And now I'm ready to adhere that beautiful star cut file down. Some of those legs on the trails there were a little bit long for my page. Oh, you can also see that I have added a black 12 by 12 mat behind my paper and then stitched with some black thread on my sewing machine. Okay, so off camera I've gone and adhered that cut file down and the photo. The photo is on foam to make sure that it was lifted up above the star cut file. So I did that off camera because I needed to weight it down with some pretty heavy books for a fair while, just to make sure that the cut file was adhered down really nice and strongly. Then I have these gold foil thickers, which I believe are from Dear Lizzie. They'll be a really old collection because I picked them up on sale at Spotlight recently. But it's a really nice soft gold, and I'm spelling out the title Sleep Sweetly, and it's just going to nestle in there between two of those little star trail legs. Now I'm going to add, it's not really journaling. There wasn't a lot that I wanted to say about this layout. So I've got a little word strip from the kit. It's Love You to the Moon and Back. I've cut that in half and adhered it down to the side of my photo. And then I just have these little strips that I've typed out on my typewriter, just a couple of little things. The first thing says My Darling Boy, and that's going to go underneath that Sleep Sweetly title. I also typed out the date, and I've typed out the age that he was. He was only 5 days old when this photo was taken. So tiny and so sweet. I've gone through my little stash of labels and found a couple of these blue labels, and I'm sticking the date down onto that one that's notched in there. And then I'm going to layer that up on top of the other label. So that's got the date and the how old he was. And I'm going to layer those two on top of each other and then pop that to the top left hand side of the photo, just to fill in that little bit of white space up there. And that's going to go up there. I don't know if I don't apply any foam to it because it's going to sit, it's fairly firm. I toyed with the idea of getting this little extra strip that said shine like the stars, because obviously it fit in really well with the starburst, but it doesn't make it onto the layout in the end. I just couldn't really find anywhere that it fit properly. So when I cut out the black layer, I kept all the black star inserts, knowing that I was going to come in and use them to scatter around on the back of the layout. So the next few minutes here, which is the last few minutes of the video, what you're going to see me doing is coming in, and first of all, I'm starting off with these black stars, and I'm just randomly popping them down across the layout. My goal was to fill in all of the spaces so that it looked like all of those stars were just bursting out all across the page. So I'm starting off with the black cardstock, and I grabbed out of my little stash of small ephemera pieces, I grabbed a whole bunch of little blue glittery acrylic and all kinds of different material stars. I've also got my little dish of tiny gold stars that I have cut out ready, and they're all small but different sizes. So I'm just randomly grabbing those and scattering them around. You can see I'm starting to make a couple of little clusters there on either side of the photo. But again, not really thinking too much about it, just popping some little dots of glue down and then the stars on top of them, having a look around to see where there are spaces to be filled. But at the same time, I didn't want to absolutely fill every little spot. I didn't want it to be too busy. I think the term that was once used was a sticker sneeze. I didn't want it to look like that, but I do want to make it look like those stars are just bursting across the page. So here are some teeny tiny little blue, I think they're acrylic. I'm not sure what the material is that they're made of. I've had them in my stash for years, and this seemed like the perfect layout to pop them onto. And I'm just adding those in. And I'm going to finish off by coming in with my white gel pen and outlining those black stars just to help them pop off the page visually a little bit more. That will pretty much conclude this layout. Off camera, I did go back in and add some more scatterings of Nuvo drops. I used a black, a silver glitter and a dark blue Nuvo drop just to add a little bit more interest to that background. This was so much fun to make. I'm really glad that I experimented with some techniques that I haven't tried before. I really hope you've enjoyed watching, and I hope you'll give it a go too if you are feeling a little bit bold and brave, because the effect is so nice. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.